Shutting down the oil fields was like breaking our hands and legs and shutting our mouths.
Now only elderly people are left in the villages.
In Magway region, many people make a living from either farming or onshore oil fields. When military authorities shut down some of the private oil wells in Magway in early June, they made an estimated 300,000 people jobless and devastated communities. Hello and welcome to Ko Tun, a weekly podcast that brings you human rights stories from Myanmar. It's brought to you by Fondation Hirondelle. This episode is produced by journalists from The Nation Voice. Names and voices may have been changed to protect contributors. Ko Tun has been working in the onshore oil wells of Magway region for 23 years, since he was only 15 years old. This is the only way he knows how to earn a living. He's from Thayet Township, an area rich in oil fields. He could expect to earn 15 to 20,000 kyat per day working in the oil wells. So he was never tempted to follow his parents into farming. But in early June, the military regime announced the immediate closure of private oil wells in Minhla and Thayet townships. Ko Tun is now jobless and struggling, along with tens of thousands of other oil workers.
Shutting down the oil fields was like breaking our hands and legs and shutting our mouths. We cannot do anything. We haven't had any income for 2 or 3 months, not even a penny. We are selling the few things we own to buy food.
Ko Tun has found occasional work as a manual labourer. But he only earns 500 or 1,000 kyat per job. It's barely enough for basic food, and he has to support his wife and parents. And Ko Tun hasn't just lost a job, but a home and a community as well. Most of the oil workers would build homes near the oil well, and their families would live there with them. Children would be sent to schools near the oil well. Ko Tun and his wife have now set up a hut on the edge of a main road.
When the oil wells were shut down, we needed money to relocate and for other family expenses. We were in real trouble. But that didn't happen only to us. It happened to everyone. People from the neighbouring villages also depended on those oil wells.
Indeed, many other locals made a living from the oil wells. They ran stores, restaurants or food stalls, collected scrap, hired out equipment, or got day labour jobs. Local villager Ko Tun remembers the good old days.
When oil was found, business people rushed to buy the land. An acre of land would cost around 150 to 200,000 kyat. Some bought land in small plots. Those of us who sold our land could make good money. When they moved location, manual laborers would transport the machinery. They used ox carts and relied on manpower. It was collective work, and everyone could earn some income.
They've all now been devastated by the closure of the oil wells. One store owner said that many young people have sold what they owned and migrated to Thailand for work.
Now only elderly people are left in the villages. There are no young people. We older people just pick bamboo shoots, harvest crops, farm, grow sesame, or do odd jobs. That's all we can do.
Magway is not the only region affected, and it's not only oil wells which are being shut down. In May, there was an order to close all distillation plants at fields in Ayeyarwady, Bago, Magway, Mandalay and Sagaing regions. Permission to produce and transport oil was withdrawn. Uso Aung has been working in the oil industry for over 30 years. He says many businesses use the cheaper oil produced by these wells and distillation plants, including gold miners and the fishing industry. He says huge numbers are directly affected, and the shutdowns will have a devastating effect on the economy.
The total number of oil drillers is around 500,000 nationwide. If the workers in oil fields and refineries in Monwa, Jan, Kin, Myanong, Mandalay and Sagaing are included, the updated figure exceeds 1 million. The economy of Myanmar will decline by 30% because of the oil industry closures.
The so-called State Administration Council, or SAC, gave no reason for the shutdown of the oil wells. But it's widely believed that they're trying to cut off a possible source of funding for anti-regime fighters. There has been fierce resistance to the junta in Magway region, and some oil well owners were reported to be paying taxes to the local People's Defence Forces instead of the military authorities. In what seems like punishment, regime soldiers reportedly started targeting oil wells in Magway and Sagaing region last year, setting fire to hundreds of wells. Go Zaw Min, the leader of one of the Magway People's Defence Forces, admitted to Do Athan that well owners have been paying taxes to the PDFs. He says this money goes to local administration and development, and some to the National Unity Government. He says that some oil wells are still operational in areas under the control of resistance forces. But he feels sorry for those well owners and workers whose lives have been so disrupted.
It is true that the livelihoods of the oil workers are affected by this crisis. I am deeply sorry about that, especially the business owners and people working with SAC in those oil fields. I don't feel good about this. To be frank, when SAC find themselves under threat, they won't do any favors, even to collaborators. The SAC's actions in blocking the income of the PDF are evidence of this.
But there are signs that not everyone is taking these closures without a fight. Some people are still reportedly sneaking in to shut down oil fields to collect oil. At the end of August, 34 people were charged under Article 19 of the Petroleum Hand-Dug Well Law for trespassing into a closed oil field in Thayek Township. Some teenage girls were released, but the rest of the group are still undergoing legal proceedings. They could face up to 3 years in prison. There are also questions over the legality of the regime's order. Uso Aung says there are normally 3 stages in closing oil businesses: notification, discussion or negotiation, and then lastly a possible shutdown notice. In this case, the closure of oil wells in Magway region was executed solely with a direct order from Central Military Headquarters. At the end of June, about 10,000 people who depend on the Magway oil fields submitted a joint petition to the SAC to reopen the oil wells. There's speculation, or at least hope, among locals that a 1-month window might be granted, or that some oil fields might be reopened because the well owners might have connections to the military. None of which helps Ko Tun. The oil well he worked on was torched, along with the homes around it. He's living by the side of a road, wondering how he's going to make a living in future, and feeling indignant about the injustice of the situation.
I feel bitter rather than sad. That's how all of us are feeling. It's like the saying, we are thirsty even though we can see the water. We have an oil well and it got forcibly shut down. It makes us so angry.
Thanks for listening to this edition of Do Athan. We would welcome your feedback on social media. This project on human rights reporting is supported by Fondation Hirondelle with the help of our donors. You can listen to our podcast via the Do Athan Facebook page. They can also be found on SoundCloud, YouTube and iTunes. You can also listen every Saturday night from 9 to 10 p.m. and Sunday morning from 6 to 7 a.m. on Voice of America Radio. Please tune in again next week.